All right, everybody, welcome. We're going to talk about the state of the union, but first, Guy Denton, I wanted to talk about the state of our union. We have an announcement, that is right. I think, Guy and I have been doing podcasts and YouTube videos a lot lately. We've decided to take our relationship to the next level. We are launching, it's not called The Next Level, we're launching a podcast called The Wrong Stuff. And if you are listening to us right now on the Matt Lewis and the News podcast, this will be the last time that you will find us there. So go to iTunes or wherever, subscribe to The Wrong Stuff, and you'll hear us pretty much every week there. Guy Denton, I'm excited, man.
I was going to say, Matt, I've waited a long time for an American to say those words to me. And then you diverged, and I realized you were announcing the podcast and weren't proposing and getting me permanent residency. But although that's slightly deflating, still, yes, very excited. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to kicking it off with you and making it a consistent thing.
That's right. So go subscribe to The Wrong Stuff right now. You can still find us here on youtube.com/Matt Lewis, but the audio podcast is going to be called The Wrong Stuff. You can already go ahead and subscribe today. Like, rate, review, all that good stuff. All right. I want to turn to the State of the Union, which we're recording this on Friday, the day after the State of the Union. So, it's still out there. And I think there's a lot of stuff, Guy, worth discussing, worth talking about. So I want to play a few clips and get you to respond, and then we can have a conversation. I thought it was a very political speech. It was a campaigny speech.
Yes.
And Joe Biden just hit the ground running. He started talking, I think, a clear contrast with Donald Trump. And he started off by comparing and contrasting Ronald Reagan with Donald Trump. And I want to play that clip, and we'll talk on the other side.
It was long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Now my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
All right. Maybe that's a play for Nikki Haley voters. I don't know. What did you think of that?
Well, I mean, I don't disagree, right? And I would imagine that on principle, you don't disagree with that either, Matt. I mean, I would say that I thought Biden was at his strongest in the opening 10 to 15 minutes of the speech, when he was delivering lines like that and actually making some pretty forceful and, I think, valid points like that. Then, as the speech continued, it devolved into what the State of the Union always is, which is a collection of moralizing platitudes and empty promises that won't be delivered on, spoken in an in an immensely sanctimonious way for an hour and a half. But it is a clever tactic. I think you're right about the Haley point. And if anything, where Biden is struggling now, and where Biden is at a disadvantage, and where this may have been brought home to the Biden camp given his poll numbers in recent weeks, is that Biden promised to be a moderate and was elected by moderates and succeeded in 2020 on the basis of appealing to moderates. And then when he actually took office, proceeded to abandon moderates and appeal to militant progressives and try to find success with militant progressives by styling himself after FDR instead of just enacting on the mandate that he was elected for. This, to me, seems like a way of returning to that and making a similar kind of appeal. Although, if that was the intention, it was undercut by a lot of what was in the rest of the speech, which I'm sure we'll come to.
Well, he did turn to like abortion and stuff, which is not
Exactly.
a way to get the conservative, Reagan conservatives on board. But the next clip I want to play, Guy, I think you'll probably also like. It had to do with January 6th. And I think this fits under the umbrella of some Democrats, and I think Joe Biden, believe that the election has to be about liberal democracy, the preservation of liberal democracy. I thought that this was a really good moment early on, very early on in the speech, and I thought he had a good line at the end. It's about January 6th. Let me play this one.
History is watching, just like history watched 3 years ago on January 6th, when insurrectionists stormed this very Capitol and placed a dagger to the throat of American democracy. Many of you were here on that darkest of days. We all saw with our own eyes the insurrectionists were not patriots. They'd come to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to overturn the will of the people. January 6th lies about the 2020 election and the plots to steal the election posed a gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War. But they failed. America stood. America stood strong, and democracy prevailed. We must be honest. The threat to democracy must be defended. My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. This is the moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies. Here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win.
I thought that was a really good line. Obviously, what Biden started off doing was talking about defending America and democracy at home and abroad, basically comparing Trump and MAGA to Putin. Not a crazy, not a crazy comparison. But what did you make of that?
I mean, it's a clever play. Go back to the previous point. Regardless of however many Americans may have lost interest in the Ukraine conflict and may simply not have the energy to pay much attention to it anymore, it's a slim minority of Americans who are actually like Vladimir Putin and will be pro-Russia. So this is only going to be a successful tactic. However, again, even though I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of the substance of that clip and what he's saying, I think it's emblematic of a big problem and an overriding theme of the night, which was that clearly his advisors and Biden himself thought that just shouting and being extremely loud would be an effective way of distracting from the age issue and making him seem more vigorous and spry and feisty than he actually is. And going into the night, I think he was only at an advantage because the State of the Union is a controlled environment, right? And say if something started to go wrong and he started to lose his train of thought in an embarrassing way or something like that, there are so many ways where he could be bailed out. Kamala could interject, Democrats in the aisles could interject, the way the speech was being shot could be used to alter the image and cover up for him. So he played it crossed. I think Noah Rothman said this. It crossed the lowest possible threshold that it could. It wasn't humiliating. It wasn't a moment of ignominy for him. However, the problem is still there, which is that Biden seems desiccated, and every time you look at Biden, you're reminded of his age, and you're reminded of how feeble he seems, and how unbecoming that seems to be for the leader of the free world. And no amount of, even though he set some clever traps for Republicans throughout the night and riled up Republicans with some good lines, as was apparent in that clip, it's still not a strategy that I don't think it's a strategy that will play very well throughout the remainder of the campaign when he's not in a safe space like that.
I don't know if he can continue it, but
right.
I think I'm more positive about the speech than you are. I think that the shouting actually did work. Much better than the whispering Biden. I think the shouting worked. He was talking very fast, sometimes too fast. I think he's very comfortable in the Capitol, having spent a lot of time there. Obviously, he's got a teleprompter. Obviously, he's very well rehearsed. I don't know if he had a pot of coffee or some vitamin B or whatever it is, but I think he looked about 5 to 10 years younger, and I think it was a good speech. And I do think that the age issue is a dominant problem for him, and I think in this one night he rose to the occasion.
I don't disagree on the point that he certainly sorry, cut around this. Now I'm losing my train of thought.
Now you're having a Biden moment. Let me go to the next clip. And all right, so in this clip, Biden talks about the age issue. He jokes about it in a way that I think sometimes his attempt to play Reagan and joke about the age issue doesn't work. But in this case, I think it did. And here, I think Biden, we'll play the clip at the end. Biden makes a point that I've heard Jonah Goldberg make a few times, which I found very interesting. So what Jonah says, for those who don't know, Guy, you've been his producer at the Remnant podcast. A point that Jonah makes is all these kind of alt-right people, the so-called new right people who are populist nationalists, they are posing as having a new idea, that the things that they're proposing are fresh and new, when in fact these are very old ideas. This kind of right-wing, quasi, populist nationalist, dare say fascist in some cases. These ideas are not new. Now they've been pushed aside for the last 50 years or 70 years or whatever, but they've just been dormant. And I think Biden, I'll play the clip and get you to talk on the other side, but I think Biden tapped into that at the end of this clip.
In my career, I've been told I was too young. By the way, they didn't let me on the Senate elevators for votes sometimes. Not a joke. And I've been told I'm too old. Whether young or old, I've always known what endures. I've known our North Star. The very idea of America is that we're all created equal and deserves to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I won't walk away from it now.
I think the yelling worked there.
I really am. I'm optimistic, Nancy.
Pelosi's probably not helpful, but
Americans, the issue facing our nation isn't how old we are. It's how old are our ideas. Hate, anger, revenge, retribution are the oldest of ideas. But you can't lead America with ancient ideas. It'll only take us back. You lead America, the land of possibilities. You need a vision for the future and what can and should be done.
So there, I think he's reframing, lowercase l liberal ideas as being romantic and new, and then the ideas of Trump as actually being old. Do you think it works?
Well, I do, but I think the problem with this is, why haven't we seen this Biden over the last year? And will we continue to see this Biden over the next 7 to 8 months? No, there is no indication that we will. And it's bizarre that we have not prior to this. Because again, when you listen to that clip, there are some clever lines in it. There are some effective lines in it. And you mentioned Reagan and the use of humor. I think using humor to distract from, to laugh off persistent points of attack from the media or from political rivals is a clever strategy. And it is effective because people respond to humor. Humor is a sign of intelligence. Humor is what brings people together, how people connect. And say if Romney, in 2012 had been able to laugh off the attacks about his money and say, I'm a rich guy, that's just what it is. Let's get over it and focus on the real
girl.
Exactly. So
that should have been his theme song.
Yeah, money, that's what I want, right? But this kind of spry, animated, slightly caddish, wink, wink, nudge, nudge Biden with that big Cheshire cat kind of grin that you could see in that clip. Well, we got to see it in that clip, but you could see it a few times throughout the night if you actually watched the speech. It is, I agree with what you said before. It is far less obnoxious than the whispering, come on, listen, man. You know what I mean. Look over there. You all know what I'm talking about. That is infinitely more irritating than offering a few snappy lines delivered with zest behind them. So again, but the problem the problem is this would have been an effective relaunch speech for a campaign, which is maybe what it was designed to be and to serve as. But if a campaign can't follow through on it and can't build upon it, and he can't carry that through to the end, then it ultimately isn't going to matter very much.
No, I'm with you on that, and I'm skeptical that they can keep. It feels like this is a one-off. I don't know that Biden can consistently perform at that level. And, again, I think this is a very special circumstance where the game is rigged, to use a word that Katie Porter recently used. But it does. I think it's a venue where he can perform well, and I'm not confident he can do it day in and day out. Now I think Biden went into this with a few things. Like, number one, he needed to overcome the age issue, as you noted, Guy. I think that the bar was so low, he was able to exceed expectations, and for that reason, I think he won. I think it was a success in that regard. He also, he needed to talk about democracy, and he did that. He also has a problem with the Gaza war because it's a wedge issue on the left where there are young progressive Democrats and Arab Americans in places like Michigan who are not happy with his support of Israel. So he had to find a way to thread that needle. And we're not going to talk too much foreign policy here, but I do want to play this clip because I don't think this has gotten the attention it deserves. He has a plan to try to help the people of Gaza. Here's the clip.
I've been working nonstop to establish an immediate ceasefire that would last for 6 weeks to get all the prisoners released, all the hostages released, to get the hostages home and ease the intolerable and humanitarian crisis and build toward something more enduring. The United States has been leading international efforts to get more humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Tonight, I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day.
All right, so first of all, he says he wants to have a ceasefire to get the hostages released. I don't see how those two things necessarily go together unless Hamas agrees to that, and I'm not sure why they would. And if Israel agrees to that, and I'm not sure why they would actually either, then this idea of constructing this pier for humanitarian aid, is Israel going to be happy with that pier? And Biden says there's going to be no boots on the ground, no American boots on the ground, but presumably American service members will be involved in constructing this pier. Potentially they could be in harm's way. What if something happens to them while trying to build this? So, this seems like a great short-term idea if you're trying to appease everyone right now, or at least domestic politics in the Democratic Party. But man, I'm not sure this happens. And if it does happen, it could go wrong, I think.
I mean, that was my reaction too. I would be very surprised if this actually happens. It is, but when you listen to that clip, it is a superficially compelling plan with no real substance behind it once you think about it for more than 2 minutes, as you just illustrated. But I agree that it's fascinating that none of the media coverage today has really been dwelling on this. And if you look at a lot of the progressive, some of the more antagonistic left-wing media coverage, all of it is focused on the way he talked about immigration and the fact that he used the term illegal. Not very little of it is directed to the way that he talked about Israel and Gaza and Israel and Hamas. But again, he's in a difficult position that of his own making, because he feels the need to appeal to progressives. He feels that he needs to consistently extend an olive branch to progressives and serve as a bridge between progressives and moderates. But progressives who may be on the Palestinian side in this conflict are not exactly indicative of the position of your average American voter or your average American moderate. And if you look at public sentiment, it very much among voters in this country, it very much aligns with Israel and shows that people are very much enthusiastic, very much in favor of Israel, and think that Israel should win in this conflict. So, in a sense, I think he's lucky that this has been glossed over. And will it actually amount to anything in the coming months? I don't think so. And other things will quickly happen to distract from it.
Pay attention to this one. If it happens, it could go very bad.
Yes.
But I agree with you. I don't think it. Ideally, the war is over before the pier is constructed.
Absolutely, yes.
To do stuff like that. I'm going to turn now to Katie Britt. This is the Republican who delivered the response to the State of the Union, a thankless job. And you can ask Marco Rubio and Bobby Jindal and many, many others who have failed at this thankless job. But Katie Britt is a young, something like 41, something like that, year-old woman, senator from Alabama. Until last night, she was considered to be a possible Donald Trump running mate, but that's probably not the case anymore.
Tim Scott may be back on the table after this. Something tells me.
Yeah, I think Elise Stefanik was behind last night. We're taping this on Friday. So I'm going to play this clip. I'm going to play 30 seconds of the clip. Now, I selected this clip specifically because it demonstrates the wide range of emotions. Very weird. Katie Britt, I have a feeling she might have taken acting lessons. She's trying to act here. And in this 30-second clip, you're going to see her
class.
You're going to see her go from very happy to very sad to at the end enraged. And it's the kind of thing like if you were dating somebody and they were having this conversation with you, it's like, guy, we need to talk. And if they went through this range of emotions in 30 seconds, you would jump out the window because they're about to kill you. It was not great, but here's the caution. Before I play the clip, I want to caution everybody. If you're listening to us at the wrong stuff, you will not appreciate you will not appreciate what happened. I think you have to watch this to get it, because a lot of what made this weird, in my opinion, was the facial expressions, not just the voice. I mean, the voice is good, but the facial expression. So let me play it, and I'll get your take on the other end.
Have imagined what my story would entail. To think about what the American dream can do across just one generation, in just one lifetime. It's truly breathtaking. But right now, the American dream has turned into a nightmare for so many families. The true, unvarnished state of our union begins and ends with this.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So actually, I think you make an interesting point, Matt, because if that had been a radio broadcast, there's still a bit of an insincere kind of twinge to the way twang to the way she's delivering that. But I think it would have been a lot more effective than actually watching that clip. And the challenge with watching something as opposed to listening to something, and a visual medium as opposed to an oral medium, is that what your brain is focusing on when you watch something is the aesthetics of it. And for people at home who just heard that and maybe didn't see the rebuttal, the set behind Britt during that speech was a kitchen, which itself is an interesting stylistic choice. And her facial expressions, it is the opposite of the point we just made about Biden, where Biden actually performed well and seemed to be enjoying himself and seemed to have a natural and sincere kind of energy about him that was actually quite infectious and stood at odds with the way he'd especially come across with that disastrous press conference a few weeks ago. In that, it almost is like watching an SNL skit where there's almost an uncanny valley effect to the way she delivered that speech and the way it looked. And no one, you were right in that it is an entirely unenviable position to be in, especially having to rebut a State of the Union address that was essentially just a glorified campaign speech. What was she supposed to do? Go out and make a campaign speech on behalf of Trump? But I don't think anyone who actually saw that will remember any of the substance of the issues that were raised. They will simply remember how eerie the delivery was. And something tells me that may make an impression for some time, but will work against it, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, totally. People don't usually remember what is said. It's whether they liked you and how it made them feel. And it made me feel freaked out. I'm going to be honest. People are not. You're not. So at the beginning of that clip, maybe I may play it again. So
that's
she's obviously
torture,
very attractive and beautiful smile. So at the beginning of that clip, she's maybe a little too happy, a little too joyful and cheery. And then she's like, but, and it's almost like she's rehearsed this acting, like it's an acting class. And she's like, now I need to change. Now we're going into the sad Katie Britt moment. And then at the end, she's like, cocks her head like this. And it's like, now we're going to be mean Katie Britt, like angry Katie Britt. And it was like, normally people, if you're happy, you can slowly work yourself up into a fit of rage, but it usually takes a couple minutes to go from happy to outraged. Like she covered, and by the way, I just showed you 30 seconds of like, I don't know, a 10-minute response. She went back and forth through these emotions, these emotional swings. Sometimes she's very happy and smiling. Sometimes she's very angry about, and then I don't know if you saw this, but she went into this pretty graphic description of gang rape at a certain point.
She certainly did. Well, again, Biden seemed unrehearsed. That is true. Biden, especially the way in which he sort of trapped the baying Republican crowd and set them up for a couple of zingers and a couple of lines designed to provoke them and ruffle their feathers. It felt organic. This felt like someone struggling through their first attempt at voice acting. And someone narrating an audiobook who wasn't sure what the tone of the audiobook was supposed to be and was sort of guessing haphazardly while they were reading a paragraph. And the result, yes, is it's. But I love the relationship comparison is a great one. But
there was like very strong Karen vibes, I would say.
Someone said to me that it looked like a hostage video. Like she needed to maybe blink a couple of times to let us know that she was all right.
I think I would not be surprised if she has taken acting lessons a little bit. But you know, in the Karate Kid, I don't know if you've seen the classic Karate Kid film, and I won't do the accent, but Mr. Miyagi basically says, like, if you don't know any karate, you're okay. Or if you know a lot of karate, you're okay. A little bit of karate in the middle, squashed like a grape. That's how I feel about acting. If you either be Daniel Day-Lewis or be yourself. But it's like she knew just enough acting to get herself in trouble. And keep in mind, I mean, I know this is someone she was like a chief of staff for Senator Shelby. So she's not some yokel from, Alabama. This is someone who's very smart, someone who's worked in Capitol Hill, but still, she's young and she's new in the U.S. Senate. And I do feel like the Republican Party has now have a pattern of taking young rising stars, throwing them in the deep end. Sarah Palin, anybody?
Yes.
Throwing them in the deep end and watching them sink. I think that this was she is someone who was a talented kind of rising star. And I do think she had a chance of being Trump's running mate, and I think it's over now. I don't think he would pick her at this point.
And if you're charismatic enough, and she clearly is charismatic, you don't need to do that kind of forced, hokey emotion to make your point. And in fact, your point will be much more effective if you're simply an eloquent communicator. And if she had just read that script in a natural kind of tone, as if she was delivering a speech to her constituents, right? I'm sure it would have been it certainly would have been infinitely more effective than what we ended up with and what she tried to do.
Well, I don't have the clip here, and I've already played a lot. This is a clip-heavy episode.
Yes.
I don't have the clip, but she did tweet out like a sort of a teaser video, and she was very natural and normal. And that teaser, like, watch me later on. I'm going to be talking about the State of the Union. Like, she seemed very normal at that point. So I think you're right that it's weird and sad that this happened to her. But man, never do the State of the Union response. If you were given the chance, say no. I'm sure it's flattering to be invited. I'm sure there's a chance it could go well, but it almost never works out. It is not a good idea to do it.
And it further underscores to that point how ridiculous the whole tradition and the whole spectacle is in the first place.
Yeah.
And
so much of what we do is performative window dressing anyway. So why not?
I guess, sure. And well, if the speech itself has to exist, then the rebuttal may as well exist too, I suppose. But the rebuttal, again, simply underscores all the things that are wrong with the main speech to begin with and how the main speech is typically delivered. So it serves its purpose in that way, I suppose.
I'm going to move on to another topic. But before we leave the State of the Union and the State of the Union response, any final thoughts or anything I should have said that I didn't?
I would say we've more or less covered it. I mean, as always, every year I try to watch the State of the Union. Usually I make it about halfway through before I feel like if I continue, all of my brain cells will have diminished by the end of the night. This time I did suffer through the entire thing, and it was better than I expected it to be. I expected a very insufferable speech overall that would not be too far removed from that press conference from a few weeks ago. But it wasn't that. He performed well. He put the opportunity probably to the best use that he could have, but he's still at a major disadvantage, and he still backed himself into a corner purely because of his own decisions. And the fact that he is losing to Trump in so many of these recent polls is embarrassing. It's an indictment of the way he's handled this campaign. It's an indictment of the way he's handled his presidency. It's an indictment of the way he squandered the powerful mandate he was given 4 years ago. And if he drops the ball, just as Trump did 4 years ago, like Trump, he'll only have himself to blame. And I don't think this speech will ultimately make much of a difference long term. It'll be up to him to try and right the ship.
And another good moment for Biden, I think, was, I don't know if you saw Marjorie Taylor Greene looking like a clown wearing the Make America Great Again hat. And she gave Biden a button with the name of this young lady who had been, I think, murdered by an illegal immigrant. Or somehow Biden got the button. I don't know if MTG gave it to him or not. But at a certain point during the speech, Biden was being heckled by Republicans. And instead of like defending the indefensible, he basically says, like, she was murdered by an illegal.
Yes.
Which is, Democrats are supposed to say undocumented. So I thought in that moment, and then Biden's like, why didn't you pass that border bill? That bipartisan border bill. I thought that was good. I don't think he nailed the delivery of that, but he, I give him a C+ on that one.
Yes, I mean, that I'm sure was a slip of the tongue from a politician who has been around a long time and who current languages, who what is chic among intellectuals in terms of the language they use is understandably kind of passed him by. And he may
No, but
feel
I think
difficult.
that's good. I think that's why Biden can resonate.
I agree.
Yeah, with Joe Sixpack better than most Democrats.
Yes. And again, it's emblematic, right? Of this is the sort of Biden we should have seen for the last 4 years, and this is the sort of Biden that could, if not effortlessly, then fairly naturally win again. He just has to resist the temptation of the worst excesses of his own side.
All right. I want to end with my man Mitch McConnell,
Yes.
the Senate Minority Leader, who is stepping down from his leadership post in November. Who this week, last week he announced he was stepping down from the post in November. This week he endorsed Donald Trump, which angered me. And I want to play a clip from Mitch McConnell's January 6th speech. He gave this speech the same day he voted not to convict Donald Trump in the Senate impeachment trial back in 2021. I think this was a great speech, but I don't understand how you could give this speech and then endorse Trump. But
Right.
I think it's worth hearing again. Dereliction of duty, and yet endorsed for president. What? I just don't get it. Why not? Look, he obviously doesn't have a future in the Republican Party. He doesn't have to worry about getting elected someday. I don't think he's got any kids who are, it's not like Tag Romney or George P. Bush or whatever. What's he thinking?
I mean, and this is the same Mitch McConnell, too, who since January 6th has endured endless, ghoulish personal attacks on him and on his wife, not just by Trump, but by people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and the House Freedom Caucus types. Endless, hideous jokes about his health and his condition and his wife and his family. But I think, but obviously the conservative movement owes a lot to Mitch McConnell, and Mitch McConnell has done many great things over the course of his political life. I think McConnell, ultimately politics, it's not an original observation to say, but it is a strange and sordid business. And oftentimes principles don't matter much when reality and when practicalities get in the way. And I think McConnell ultimately cannot stomach the idea of another 4 years of Joe Biden in the White House and what that could mean, and what that could mean in terms of emboldening the progressive fringe, and what that could mean for the Supreme Court, what that could mean for the various branches of government, and so on. And so, the nomination, Trump will be the nominee at this point. McConnell is the establishment leader of the party, so McConnell feels that he has no choice but to endorse Trump purely for the sake of stopping Biden and for trying to galvanize support among the beleaguered Haley types in the GOP. It's sad. It's not ideal, and he easily could not have done that. But I think for people like us, Matt, we just have to try to look past it and remember all the things that McConnell got right.
All right. It's weird. It's frustrating, sad, disturbing, but we can move on. Before I let you go, so first
On that
of all,
delightful note,
let's plug it again, right? The Wrong Stuff. Sign up. If you're listening to us at Matt Lewis in the News, that's going to go away. You have to go to The Wrong Stuff to listen to us. iTunes, wherever podcasts are heard, Spotify, that kind of thing. Have you seen any movies, TV, anything to leave us on, Guy?
oh, that's a good question in terms of light stuff. Movie-wise, nothing's out, Matt. Well, Dune is out, and I haven't seen Dune yet. Have you?
No, I haven't seen the first one. I haven't read the book. I'm not
Neither have
a
I.
nerd. I'm not a nerd. You know what I did see is this American Fiction.
Oh yeah. What did you think?
Moments of brilliance, but the ending is a cop-out. They did like what I would call a Wayne's World ending, where there are multiple different possible scenarios of how it might end. I thought that was a cop-out, but definitely, I would say worth seeing, worth your time, as it were.
I agree. Yeah, it's been a month or two, so I don't remember it that well. I thought it was enjoyable, but it didn't seem to me to have anything especially profound or original to say. There's a lot of kind of playful jabbing at various facets of modern culture and wokeism and so on, and elite culture, and again the excesses of the excesses and ridiculousness of elite language and progressive speak and so on. But none of it, I didn't think any of it quite cohered into a singular compelling point. And I agree with you that the ending is very much emblematic of that. It just sort of fizzles out. But Jeffrey Wright is very good. Jeffrey Wright is the sarcastic, prickly leading man who's a lot of fun to watch. And it's nicely made. It's well structured. It's worth seeing.
All right, so we didn't get as much humor or fun into this episode as we normally do. So before I leave you, I want to play. I'm going to go to one more clip. I've played this one many times over the past week on my various enterprises, but I think you'll enjoy this. This is from Donald Trump.
We are a nation that just recently heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat your.
I just sit around watching that hours on end. I love that clip. I'm not sure what it is about that's so fulfilling, but it really it ties the room together.
That's me presenting to the class in middle school when we had a project due and I hadn't done any preparation for it. Saudi Arabia and Russia, thank you very much.
What was that? Is it did the teleprompter give out? I'm not sure if that was just him, like the computer just shutting down.
Yeah, that's his Trump has stopped working. That's the sound it makes in his head. That's right. It's kind of sounded like he was about to launch into a mixtape. I'm sad you cut off the clip. That was the beginning of his new single.
It's so good. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to plug?
Nothing right now. The primary thing we have to plug is The Wrong Stuff, Matt, which everyone listening should run out and tell all their friends about, and be sure to tune into next week and in the coming weeks.
That's right. I wanted to call it Cold Gin Time or Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day, but that was taken. So
yes.
we're The Wrong Stuff, which I think shows our self-effacing nature, that we can, if Tom Wolfe did the right stuff, we're the wrong stuff. And the people we highlight often, in fact, Katie Britt, I think, will be the thumbnail of this episode. And I think The Wrong Stuff can accurately describe what we saw in that response.
That is quite true. And, it may not be cold gin time again, Matt, that the wrong stuff is the only thing that keeps us together.
Indeed. All right, man. I'll see you back here next week in the wrong stuff.
Can't wait, Matt, and I'm glad we won't have to watch another State of the Union in the process.
Amen. See you, man.
See you soon.